everyone. Hi, PAX. How's it going? Welcome to our panel. This is We're Here, We're Queer, Now What? This is going to be an LGBTQ focused panel about working in the industry, working on games with queer content, and just talking a little bit about, our personal experiences as developers within this space. So I'm really excited. We have a really fantastic panel lined up for you today. We're going to talk about, our games, but also our day-to-day sort of, experiences. And I think it'll be really great. So to kick off introductions, hello, my name is Francesca. I am a game designer and developer currently based in Wisconsin. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently employed at Fulbright as a designer. Just recently started there. I'm really excited. And I also work on independent games, mostly multiplayer content or narrative-focused games. And the last thing that I'll mention is I also teach Introduction to Game Development for Marginalized Genders through an organization called Code Coven. So please check us out. We're entirely remote and online, and I'm really passionate about, helping others get into games and start making their own games. So passing it off to the panel, let's go through and we'll do some quick introductions.
Sure. I'll get started. My name is Valens. I'm a games journalist, mostly focusing on covering indie, adult, and queer games, usually the intersection of all those. I'm also an adult game developer myself, and I'm a sex worker as well that has a pretty big client base of geeky fandom, gamer queers. So I sit at a very interesting intersection there. And my pronouns are she, her.
Oh, I'll go next. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. And I'm very happy to be invited here to our digital panel. My name is Carbanoid. I'm also known as Dreadful Damsel. I'm currently employed by Team Nimbus, an indie game company, and we're working right now on our first production called Cloud Meadow. First production, and it is completely queer inclusive. So it's very exciting. I'm also non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. Oh, I'm also, hold on. We're talking about other things. I'm also, I work on, I've been working in the entertainment industry or the adult entertainment industry specifically for a very long time. I also work as a adult entertainer. Dancing, camming, all those things. And working in adult gaming, adult queer gaming, and adult entertainment really very heavily intersect and inform each other. I have, like Anna said, I have a lot of fans who cross over from both my erotic artwork and into my adult modeling. So a lot of nerds who like to be horny.
Big mood.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Who's ready to go next?
I'll go. Hi, I'm Dani Lalonders. I'm the head developer of the popular visual novel called Validate, struggling singles in your area. I go by they, she. I'm a non-binary woman. I'm currently chilling. Validate's pretty much my main priority.
Nice.
And it's great. It's queer. It's people of color. It's awesome. We have an Italian. He's kind of cool. But other than that,
representation.
Representation. We gotta have that white representation, y'all. But other than that, yeah, stan Validate. Stan Yolanda. She's the best character in Validate.
Congrats on the Kickstarter, by the way.
Thank
That's
you.
so cool.
Hello, sorry, I was muted. Hello, my name is Veronica Nikatine Ripley. I'm a content creator on Twitch.tv. I'm one of those Twitch streamers you may have heard about. I do a lot of roleplay content, so I focus mainly on tabletop RPG and Grand Theft Auto roleplay at the moment. I also do some variety content occasionally, and I'm extremely trans. And I like to say she, her. So.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Yeah, I am so excited for this panel. For myself, at least, this is my first time getting to really like sit down and meet and chat with many of you, and I'm really excited to learn from y'all and hear about your experiences. So I think just to kick us off. Yeah, I think we mentioned some of the current projects that we're working on, but just for a bit of context, I was wondering if we could also just mention, oh my god, big cat, so cute.
Oh my god.
What is your
new
cat's
panel
name?
topic.
That's first question, yeah.
This is Mephistopheles.
Oh my gosh, hello.
We just call him Mephisto.
That's adorable.
I want to make a dark deal so bad.
Yeah. Oh my god, what a cutie. But yeah, I'm hoping that we can mention what are some of the queer games that folks can go check out to find your work. Just kind of what we've been up to recently. So I can kick it off and then we can go around again. So some of the recent things that I've published in my independent work that are queer games. So I recently launched a game called Starcrossed, which is a 2-player, it's a cooperative action arcade game about magical girls in space. So you get to pair up the different characters for this more 2-player intimate gameplay and save the galaxy, and there's lots of sparkles, and it's very queer, and yeah, so that was one of my first sort of large-scale independent launches, and it really helped me actually get involved in sort of the queer game space, which was really exciting for me. And then more recently, I launched a game called We Should Talk, which is a short-form narrative game about the nuance of communication. So it explores conversation, the difficulty of conversation and being understood correctly, and so that game came out recently as well. So those are the things that I'm really interested in exploring, is intimacy between characters, but also intimacy between players as they engage with digital spaces. So those are some of my interests in game making. What other games have folks been working on recently that people can check out?
I really wanted to jump in real quickly and just say that I played We Should Talk. I believe it was at the Game Devs of Color Expo last year in New York, and I loved it. It was so good.
Thank you.
And especially, it also made me better understand the way I communicated with my partner at the time, and also other people in general, and the ways in which it was helpful in some ways and not so much others. So it's a really fantastic game that really does explore issues of gender and sexuality really well.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, we really look to, even just couples therapy and figuring out the power that, swapping out simple words say starting a sentence with you versus starting a sentence with I versus saying we completely changes how that thing is understood. So yeah, I'm really happy that came across. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I definitely felt that. As for what I've been working on recently, in terms of my reporting, I love reporting about queer adult games. I actually did report on Cloud Meadow a little while ago, before I even knew that Dreadful was working on it. It was
I did see that.
I was like, oh my god, what? This awesome person I follow also does this game I love. That's crazy, bonkers. But last year I published my first long form adult game, which is called Blood Pact, and it's built by and for trans women, more specifically trans lesbians, and it's basically, without giving away too much of the story, because it's a plot that you do want to enjoy as it comes to you, no pun intended. It's about this lonely trans girl that accidentally makes a blood pact with this really hot dominant succubus trans girl, and they start a coven together, and they have a lot of sex, and based on true story happenings.
Yeah, I was like, that's so relatable.
I know, right? I had to change the names around, but no, in all seriousness though, Nikatine helped me with it. She did the voice acting, which came out phenomenal. And that was a project that was really near and dear to me, expressing queer trans lesbian desire in a way that was really centered around how we feel about other trans women. And I'm working on 2 other erotica kinetic interactive fiction projects right now. One is about a trans girl getting a blowjob from another trans girl during a nuclear bomb going off. And another is about like this girl that is like in love with her best friend and then turns into like a giantess and like things happen. So, you know, like all nonfiction, of course. But yeah, I've definitely been busy working late nights, turning all of those interesting fantasies into interesting realities.
Awesome, thank you.
I guess I can go next. I've been working on Validate. Validate is my first game. It's kind of insane to tell people that because they don't believe me. Validate's yeah, it's my first game.
Why don't they know? What makes it that they don't believe you?
I mean, Validate is just like super duper big, and people are just like, "No way, this is your first game." And I'm just kind of like. Like,
yeah, I think the success that it has found has been phenomenal. It's been really great to see like the community rally behind it. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, our Kickstarter ended about 2 weeks ago from Monday. It's been really great. It's really taught me a lot about people in the industry, like the industry in general, and how for a very long time people have wanted games just like Validate, like games with people of color, games with queer people of color. And how there's been a need for it for like almost like a decade, and it just has not come. And then I decided that I wanted to make a game with my friend one day, and it just became what it is now. So that's what I've been working on. I'm the head developer. I oversee everything. I'm also the head writer. So I write on Validate. I'm writing Malik and Yolanda, two of my favorite characters in the game. Yolanda's the best character in the game, so y'all just have to
Not
look
biased
up.
at all.
Not biased, but she's the best. You can ask anyone. So that's pretty much what I've been working on. Stan Validates, validategame.com, all that stuff.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, I'll go next. So currently I'm working for Team Nimbus, which is an indie gaming company, on the farming, fighting, breeding dungeon crawler Cloud Meadow. It's all of those things I just listed. There's so many cute, fun things and bubbly art. I am specifically an artist. I am an animator, and I might end up doing some coding at some point. Who knows? I mean that's in my history as well, so I wouldn't be surprised. It is an adult game, so since I got on board, I've mostly been animating sex scenes. A lot of just anything, pretty much like whatever pairings, whatever genders you can think of, lots of different body types, and different ways of, expressing your sexuality. Are you dominant, are you submissive, are you top or your bottom, etc. The team takes the time to make sure that the different things are all getting covered. It's all in paperwork. It's none of the inclusivities happen by accident. It's all paid attention to, and it's a lot of fun. I'd have to say, in all of the work in animation I've done over the last 12 years, has definitely been the most fun and the most rewarding as well.
Awesome.
I feel like in character animation, it's a very high in demand skill, but it's not very well compensated because nobody really believes that it's worth more. And with indie gaming companies, they're taking less time spending money on feeding into corporate and spending money on the artists who are working on making the game a reality, the artists and other creators. So it's been rewarding, not just in bringing diversity that has intention behind it into the industry, as well as paying enough to keep a roof over my head, unlike some other very popular companies I've worked for in the past. And it's my first step into gaming, because I'm personally not a gamer myself. My passion lies in television, animation. Unfortunately, working on the things that you're super passionate about can sometimes make you like hate it. So I went into something that would be a really good use of my skills, but wasn't something that I like pour my heart and soul into in my personal life as well. And that kind of separation makes doing the work a lot easier. So being able to approach gaming, coming from a different background, even though I have overlapping skills, was really, really refreshing. And working for an indie company, unlike other studio settings I've been in before, they take a lot more effort into making the work environment safe and accommodating for everybody. Except when you work for another studio that gets commissioned by multi-billion-dollar companies, they don't care about your feelings. They just want their product. So being able to work in gaming and in independent gaming that is rewarding kind of also allows me to manage my personal life. I am able to pursue a lot of other things, like I'm also a sex worker, and I am able to pursue personal artwork. I don't just animate, I also paint, I also build things, I do lots of different types of design outside. So working in gaming is like just provided me with a lot of opportunities that I did not have when working in adjacent industries.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
My experience so far has been pretty awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that is absolutely a point that I want to come back to, because I find that a lot of folks who are working in, on queer games, and they themselves are queer, they put a lot of themselves and their own experiences into their work, and it becomes very tied to like identity. So I want to come back and revisit this, but let's finish quickly.
I don't have any. I just play the games that the smarter people like create.
Well, talk to us. Well, if then we can adjust it a little bit. Why don't you talk to us about
So
What are
very
you
occasionally.
playing?
Well, so very occasionally I'll do I'll appear in other people's games, like Valens, Blood Pact, or Hard Coded. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hard Coded.
Yes.
Amazing.
Fantastic. I appear as an Easter egg in Hard Coded. There's that really I don't really like work on games necessarily. I'm not opposed to the idea, but I've just never found the time. I just do a lot of roleplay content. Occasionally my roleplay content veers into the very, very queer. Like every single one of my characters is queer in some way. So.
And I think to kick us off, I'd love to revisit this point about, separation of your personal life from, your day-to-day work. As I said, I just find that many of the games that I make that are queer, I'm working with small teams that are putting a lot of their own experiences and just like their thoughts into this game. So it becomes inherently a bit personal and tied to their, not work life. And I'm wondering if this is an experience that you all are having as well, and how you sort of navigate that.
Absolutely. For me, there's a lot about myself that's really vulnerable in my work, and then kind of put myself into it, whether that's writing about sex work, or writing about sex with other trans women, whether it's writing about things like the journey into coming into my queerness. Those are all really personal themes that I talk about in my work, because I feel like it's super important to put it out there and show people the messiness of these identities and how difficult it can be. If you're a queer trans woman who wants to do sex work, that's a lot of internalized shame that you have to deal with. And for me, learning, I think two things. One, having really strong boundaries and putting them down and saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to put out there, and this is what I'm not going to put out there. I had a very messy coming out with my family. I don't really talk about my family and my work for that reason. I don't feel like I want to do that, and that's a boundary I've stood up for in my life. And also, meanwhile, sex work, kind of similarly, I'm very, very open about doing sex work. I'm partly out of principle. I feel like it's super important for me politically to be really open about it, because I think it helps destigmatize it. And for me, being able to navigate that and talk about it, but also decide, like, okay, but parts of my sex work and my adult work are not entering my main account on Twitter. Or I'm going to talk about a lot of parts about my sex working life or about my queer identity in my games, but these specific things, that's a no-go. So being able to really do that and say, like, these are my boundaries and sticking to them, while it can be a privilege in its own right, like, being able to do that has helped me a real lot. And that's absolutely been vital.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely have had, like, similar experiences where I definitely find that my relationship to the queer content that I'm producing, and this is sort of, I've actually discovered this kind of through our interviews and actually talking with you, Anna, but thinking about how the way that I represent queerness in my games, or how I navigate that as a topic, is very closely related to how I experience my own queerness. And personally for me, I find that my queerness is often very invisible. I'm a bisexual woman in a relationship with a man, and that's not often a part of my identity that is very visible to others. And I have found that as a result of that, when I make queer content in my games, I often don't feel comfortable approaching those sort of topics more head on or more bluntly. It's usually just something that is interwoven into my characters or my narrative or my world building as something that is commonplace and is accepted because that's how I view my own identity, but it's not something that is like prominently visible in my work often. So that's something I've been navigating and thinking about a lot recently.
Absolutely. I can definitely relate to that. A lot of similar experiences there for me too.
Yeah. Invalidate, so the whole game, like, everyone in the game is gay, like, and is queer. Like, that is kind of just, like, the whole point. Like, even if they come off as a straight person, by the end of their journey, they will understand more about themselves and be queer. That is not a spoiler. That is sort of a spoiler, but whatever.
Queers make queer games.
Yeah. Like, everyone...
I don't expect any different from you.
Yeah, like, everyone on the team is queer. Everyone on the team is a person of color because, the industry is very, 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 very white. And I wanted to emphasize that, like, making games with people of color should be made by people of color. But especially myself as the head developer, I'm a Black woman. I am very marginalized in the gaming community. People do not like me. And that's fine, because I don't give a shit. Like, if you don't like me, oh well. Like, I'm still alive, and I'm still kicking it, and I'm still having this awesome-ass game.
Hell yeah.
But I am also like a non-binary woman. I am bisexual with a preference towards men, which kind of sucks. But, like, writing those kind of stories, writing those stories with people of color is just something that's never done ever. And I feel like with Validate, I'm really given the opportunity to write these stories, especially, like, since I am Yolanda's writer. Yolanda is Black, and she's French, Black, and Korean. She's biracial. And, like, there's just so many stories that are just not written about, like, so many marginalized people who very much exist. And Yolanda's whole story is basically how she wants to stand up for herself as a woman, as a Black woman. She doesn't want to be stepped over. She doesn't want to be someone's mammy. She just wants to be herself. And Malik's story, who I'm also writing, is that he is a Ghanaian American, and I'm Nigerian American. Same, all West Africa is kind of the same. So I wanted to personalize Malik a little bit and how he feels disconnected to his own culture, which is how I felt growing up, and like how like he never really meshed with his parents that much, and how he never really got a chance to really explore his sexuality and his gender, because when you're born to immigrant parents, you really don't get that opportunity to do so. So I really wanted, like, my queerness and, like, everyone's queerness on the team, like, all the writers are queer and people of color. Like, we are all, every character that we write is somewhat personal to us, and, like, we are putting our own stories into these characters. That's not saying it's a self-insert. we have stories that are just never told, and I'm very, very grateful that I'm given the opportunity to tell my story, and I'm giving others the opportunities to also tell their stories, because we hope that Validate coming out introduces a whole new wave of stories created by people of color for people of color. So basically, I recruited people of color who, like, I knew in my circle, like, all the artists are people of color, like, all the writers, programmers, musicians, like, we're all people of color. I really try to emphasize that we are people of color, because a lot of gaming companies try to get away with calling themselves diverse while having 10 white people and then one person of color. Like, it's not diversity. That's just a token person, and even if you don't intend it, that's how it looks.
It's always the situation with POC people in creative boards. It was the same thing my entire life, every single studio I worked for, and even in my education. I was always the only black person in the room, or if I wasn't the only black person, I was the darkest person in the room. You stick out. Everyone knows that you're there, but they also know that you're different, so they don't know how to interact with you as if you don't speak English.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have this job if I didn't speak English, so I don't know.
It's really, it's bullshit. Like, I genuinely do think it's bullshit, and I this is why I prefer to work for myself and not for others, because the environment, like the workplace environment I've created for Validate, is so welcoming and so safe. I've heard so many horror stories of people being like, oh, I worked in this company and they treated me like this and they said racist jokes and they thought that they can get away with it and just like this. Like, I never want anyone I work for or anyone who works in games to feel like that, because the industry already sucks as much as it does when it comes to racism, it comes to transphobia, homophobia, all that BS. I don't want anyone to feel like that, especially going forward as we continue to make queer games. And that's why I created my team. I love my team very much. Everyone on the team is awesome. Shout out to the head devs. Shout out to everyone on the team. And also, shout out to our fans, because we would not be here without y'all. Like, it's insane that we went from a $16,000 goal and we made $47,000 out of it. And, like, people really, really, really want Validate and really wanted to succeed. And, like, low-key, that's a lot of pressure, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Speaking, since you mentioned about people telling you that they've had bad experiences in studios because of racism and stuff like that, it goes all the way to the top, and it happens enough to where they will feel comfortable enough saying things where their employees can hear, and employees who can hear happened to include me one day when I knew that I had to leave this studio. But I hadn't really made any serious strides towards doing that. And then one day when I was just moving around about the studio, I passed by a meeting room where it was full of a bunch of the developers, all white men, talking about how they forced so much. And the guy who was talking, he was my project manager of the show that I was working on. So this man, I heard out of his own mouth, he said, you can't just make shows about little white boys anymore these days. You always got to put on some kind of diversity, at least. And then I kind of didn't really catch the rest because it was just so upsetting that I didn't want to get caught listening and then, spill my guts. But it was that exact moment where it's like, okay, I know from now on that I'm never going to do a pitch again for the rest of my life. Because all the people who want your ideas and want to make money off of your ideas, old white dudes who don't care about the message that you have to send.
Being able to find other queer people is such an overlooked and completely necessary, foundationally necessary need for so many young, even questioning queer people.
Absolutely.
Being able to find someone and look to someone and say, oh, it's gonna be okay because they're doing it, is like a game changer. It can absolutely make the difference between whether or not somebody comes out, years earlier. A few years ago I founded Transmission Gaming, which is a Discord server. It's the largest Discord server for trans gamers. So it's I founded it because I was playing Overwatch at the time, how many years ago, and we couldn't find any, like, every time I would go on voice, people would get like really weirded out, or like they wouldn't want to play with me, or they'd get mean. So I was like, well, maybe I should just find other trans people to play with, because they're not gonna care. So I did, and I started Transmission Gaming, and now it's ballooned into thousands of members, and there's a Twitch team component to it too now. So we raise money for charity, and
That's awesome.
being able to have that, to have a basically a roster of people that can act as not just ambassadors for coming out, but also as role models, is vital for the queer community, for the trans community.
Yeah.
And it's super overlooked.
I feel like being a role model plays a lot into the reason why all of us here push so hard to do the work that we do in gaming. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but it took someone else who was already queer telling me, hey, I noticed queer things about you. Maybe you should look into that. Like, you have to be told by other queer people, because no one else is going to do it. Our queerness as people, and we don't see it in entertainment unless it's to make fun of us. Or at least that's how the entertainment that I grew up with in the 90s. So, like, I definitely, like, when I used to not work in gaming, one thing that I loved to do in all the cartoons I worked on was put gay couples wherever I could in crowd scenes.
Yep.
Or when I was doing the acting between two characters that was kind of flirty, I would really push it. Like, there would be scenes where, like, oh, I'd love to work on that, but somebody else got it. It was very clearly animated by a straight person. But if I animated, it would have looked a lot more gay. So even when I was in a situation where, queerness isn't at the forefront, I always try to put it in, because some kid is gonna, like, see a gay thing I put on TV, and it's gonna awaken something in them. And and now that I'm working in queer entertainment, I can do that. I feel like I can do that a lot more meaningfully.
I think that's such a good point. Just about visibility and representation, right?
I too operate on subversion. so many of my characters, I mainly do roleplay content, and I do a lot of characters, right? And almost all the time when I'm live, if I'm live for 9 hours, at least 8 of them are going to be me in character. So if somebody's scrolling through Twitch and sees my content, they're most likely going to see me in character doing a thing, and so they won't necessarily know who I am or what I look like or anything about me. And so if they're exposed to this character who is very queer or puppeted, I guess, by a queer person, they're still being exposed to it, even though it might not be as in the forefront of the show.
Existing, being queer, but just like letting your queerness be a part of your existence.
Exactly.
It's so nice, isn't it? Like,
amen. Yeah. It's like, this is who I am. It's not just like a couple hours a day to decide up. Time to be gay as shit right now. Okay. I mean, sometimes
sometimes
I
do that too.
And to that point, that's why I think that, like, our work is super important. Like, as queer people, we are creating media for queer people. Like, it is very, 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 very obvious and very easy to tell when queer couples in media are written by straight people, and people don't realize like how common that is. Like, as a queer person of color, like I'm just like, whenever I see like a black queer woman in media, I'm just like, so which white straight woman wrote this? Because it wasn't someone with this skin color. So, like, let me know. Like, our work is just super important. Like, for anyone who's listening to this, like, if you are queer, make work, make media. Like, just do it. Like, no one's gonna stop you but yourself. Just do it.
Amen.
What I say, when gay people, queer people make something, make it gay. Just do it. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, somebody might not like this because they're stupid. Just put them in. It's okay. It's okay. It's not illegal. No one's going to die. Well,
Well,
I hope.
I mean,
I really hope. But like,
Fingers crossed.
it's not illegal. Just do it. It's okay. Please.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think
just make
something-
the character gay. It's okay.
yeah, I think like something that was really big for me also was you know, conversations about making like messy queer content and like
Yes.
having just like showing really authentic experiences and yeah, because I for a very long time did feel that like I maybe was not, you know, as queer as I should be to be making queer content that really represented me. And I think just like that someone just talking about like, yeah, like make messy representation because that's going to be like authentic to your experience and that's going to inspire someone else. But I do want to talk a little bit about I guess like positive representation, since we're talking a little bit about, you know, media that we've interacted with. And I know one of the questions that we wanted to talk about was, are there any specifically like queer games, queer characters, or queer creators that really inspired you to get started working in this space?
For me, there was quite a number. I actually got very lucky because I came into the work that I do in games right in the middle of kind of these two moments of more of a sexual awareness in games and more of awareness that you can be openly queer. Before I get into that, though, I did want to just go back really quickly to a point. We're talking a little bit about, you know, the ability to see yourself in the room in games, right? And how often, you know, people that look like myself, at least in terms of race, are the people that get to dictate who is allowed in and not allowed into the room.
Yeah.
I cannot count how many queer panels I've been to where there was 0 black people that were on the panel, or like maybe at most they had like one person. And it was very clearly just like not considered. Everyone that was leading the panel was white. They didn't talk about race at all, like those kind of things. And like, it's so... It's not just irresponsible and racist, but like if you're a white person, you care about those issues, like you should be going out of your way to make room for that. I've been thinking a lot about that too, because especially both over the past year, but also since I worked on Blood Pact, which does have, you know, its main character is a Chicana trans woman, and you know, Nikatine and I worked together on that. I specifically contracted her to voice it because I wanted a Chicana trans woman to voice it. There's something wrong if the only people talking about queerness are queer. There's something wrong if the only people that care about queer people in the industry are queer. Like, you should also, whether you're straight, you know, whether you're part of another privileged identity, you should be able to actively see what can I do in order to help the people around me that are oppressed. And so for me, I definitely saw that a lot in people that were writing about sexuality and writing about games before me. You know, Bonnie Ruberg obviously is a really good example of someone who doesn't just talk about queerness, but is like, hey, like we talk about like the term down low in gay culture. That's appropriated from like black gay men. Like, why would you do that? And so we're going to talk about this in queer games, that like this game represents like that kind of aspect of you know, being on the DL, being on the down low, but like that in and of itself is a loaded concept that has been appropriated to a certain extent. You know, seeing people do that, or people, Ludus Interruptus by Merritt K was like a huge inspiration to me. It taught me like, oh, I can write about sex like in games and people want to read this? Like, Jesus, this is awesome. Being able to see that, which also had an intersectional lens. It was about like, hey, like, you know, the idea that like sex is just like pressing a button for 20 seconds until you nut is like super heteronormative, and like gay people internalize that. Like being able to see someone say that and seeing people explore both their oppressed identities but also acknowledge, you know, go through that ego death is like super fucking important.
Oh, I had a point about that. We're talking about lesbians?
Oh
No.
God, yes.
I was just
Yes.
I was thinking about I was just thinking about girls. I wanted to mention that being an artist in adult gaming, in being allowed to be myself and not having to tone down being a hard femme queer who's really horny all the time and just wants to, you know, and work in adult gaming, so that's a very useful thing to have. But it allows me to kind of not just express kind of being gay, but it also it gives me a chance to translate my experiences into my artwork, like my personal experiences. And we were talking about inspirations actually. When one of the girls who inspired me to get actually to push for being more purposefully queer in my artwork was an artist named who goes by Acai Barbie. She does a lot of black lesbian artwork. She is a bisexual woman who's primarily attracted to women, and she does a lot of horny black lesbian art, and everyone loved it. I was like, wait, can I do that too? I'm a black lesbian. Can I do that? And now we're here.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of I feel like her work and her commitment to showing black queer love influenced how I the way that I artistically portray my own adult entertainment. Like, you see this purple room with the flashes and light colors. She used a lot of purple, and I was like, oh, purple's like the only good color. So now I like everything here is purple. I'm stressed today. Got something different, slightly. But yeah, seeing other queer women in adult entertainment showed me that I could do that too. And the reason why I want to be so visible, not just as like people know that I'm queer, but I also want to put my face to my artwork, is that I want other black queer femmes to see me and be like, I can do that, because that's a thing that I just keep going through, learning about my sexuality and learning about my gender. It's like, I can do that. You see somebody else doing it, you see somebody like you doing it, then you feel like you can do it too. So
I love that. I want to say really quickly too how much I think we don't talk enough how much we can learn from each other in that way too. What really inspired me to write really unapologetically about like being attracted to other trans women, and this kind of concept I call like trans sapphic desire, actually goes all the way back to when I first read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, because that was inspired by Black is Beautiful, right? Like this idea that like it's not about like you should try to look like white or light skin, like being black is beautiful. And that was something that stuck with me a lot. And then I started to think about that in terms of being trans. Like, you know, what does this mean for me? Well, being trans is beautiful, right? Like, I'm thinking about this a lot because there's so many ways, like, both that we can be distinctly different in terms of our identities and yet learn so much from each other. And that's why sharing these stories is so important, and listening to each other. Because, like, I don't have to share all of your identities to still understand how important that is.
Yeah, and I absolutely wanted to echo that that point about, you know, putting your face to your work and like being very visible, like intentionally. I think a lot of my experience working on queer content, and the reason that I wanted to do that in a much more visible way in my more recent, I guess, like years in my career, is because I was interacting with a lot of queer spaces online, like just like fandom for me, like growing up, like not interacting with specifically queer games, but finding queer communities that were creating queer content around those games and those fandoms, was a really big thing for me. But then I found that, you know, those discussions and those spaces weren't translating into like my local communities. And when I started making games, not seeing that sort of representation or experience visible, or not even having like discussions about queerness in games. So that was sort of at a point, that was the point for me where I felt like, you know, we're obviously talking about these things online and I'm able to find these communities, but within my immediate space, there's no one who is visibly, you know, working on queer content who I am able to really like interface with. So I really wanted to start being that person, and reach out and find people, you know, who were doing the same thing, and thought that that was a really important thing to do.
Yeah, I feel like it takes a lot of bravery to be so visible, the more marginalized you are. But I don't know, at least for me, the less time I spend trying to be accepted into non-queer spaces, the easier time I have just being myself.
But like as a Black woman, like it is very hard to be accepted in many queer spaces because many queer spaces are very, very white. And it's just like it's gotten to the point where I'm just like, you know what? And also like I've dealt with so much racism in queer spaces where I'm just kind of like every white queer person I meet, I'm kind of side-eyeing and like asking my friends like, is this person cool? Like, am I allowed to interact with them? Because like I'm just so tired of the BS and the bullshit of being like microaggressed and people being like, oh hey girl, like using like a Black sense and AAVE. Like I don't want to deal with that ever again. And that's why the queer spaces that I am in and the queer people who inspire me are often people of color who I can call my friends, people of color who understand what I go through, people who share my experiences, and like they understand like why we are the way we are and like how we're queer and how difficult it is to be queer as people of color, because I don't know about y'all, but people just do not take us seriously. Especially, and like when we are in games, they're just like, why are you guys in here? Like, oh, you guys are forcing this agenda against your community. Like, that's just not how it is. Like, we exist, and we shouldn't have to explain why we exist, if that makes any sense.
I'm kind of at a point, I guess, where I just say what I'm doing and I dare somebody to question me. How many little Black girls decided not to do a thing because they were told that's not for little Black girls? I want to be that inspiration. Also, I love children. Kids are so nice. If you're Black and you want to do the thing, just do it.
Just do it.
It's not illegal.
Just do it.
They make it seem like it's illegal, but it isn't. You can do it. I did it, and like, I just did it because I could. You just do the thing, please.
I would love to hear from Veronica, actually, because I'm really curious about how do you find your audience and how do you tell your community that this is an inherently queer space?
Sure. Well, like I said, I operate on Subversion. I mostly come at this broad, very mostly heteronormative community of Twitch streamers. I mean, or Twitch viewers. I mean, nobody looks at Twitch and is like, wow, what a diverse group of viewers. Until you can take a closer look, because while it's true that sure the vast majority of Twitch users might not be queer in some way, there's a huge section of it that is queer and that does need some kind of entertainment, you know. And when I was getting started on Twitch, I desperately wanted to find other queer creators, and back then it was easy. There was communities. They called them Twitch communities, and you could tag your stream with whatever you wanted. And I found a bunch of trans and queer content creators, and that was really how I got my start there. But now it's a little bit more difficult. Twitch doesn't have that feature anymore, and it's impossible to use Twitch's search functions to do that. And so I really have to rely on word of mouth and just connecting with people that way. Other content creators too have we've all got the 6 degrees of separation with each other, so we all know each other kind of in some way or another in the queer community on Twitch. It's not that big. So yeah, a lot of my viewers will introduce me to people or my Discord communities. Transmission Gaming, for one, is huge for that, since it's a roster of just trans, just Twitch streamers. So introducing my viewers to queer content has to be done with a lot of like forethought, because this Twitch community isn't necessarily inherently queer. I only inhabit a lot of those qualities myself. So when I introduce queer content to these viewers, it's not necessarily done so in a very broad way. It's usually step by step, or I'll mention something offhand, and then I'll a few hours later I'll bring something back up, and then it's all like in character and role play context. But it ends up being that eventually new viewers who found me through the last couple days or the last few hours will start to realize, like, oh, are you queer? Are you trans? Are you who are you?
What have I walked into?
Where am I?
Yeah.
My thinking is that, like, the people who know that I'm queer are gonna come to show up because I'm queer, but the people who are just stopping by might stay because I'm queer, or they might stay because of the content that includes that kind of representation.
I love that.
So,
yeah, and I think it's such a shame that like, yeah, you had this specific, tool that the platform was providing to create community and help people, find each other, and having that not exist anymore, specifically on Twitch. I think that's
it's a really common thing with tech companies, especially those in the Bay Area and San Francisco, to pay lip service to queer interests. Everyone wants to appear that they're supportive when they don't really want to put in any kind of effort to make that accessible, to make their tools accessible. Queer people have literally always, for all time, have had to organize and find each other with alternative channels, right? We've never been just handed the means that everybody else has to find each other.
Absolutely.
And so this is just the technological next step, where we're still not given the tools that we need to find each other, but we're still going to find each other anyway.
Yeah.
Because we need to.
Absolutely.
So I have no doubt in my mind that we're still going to be able to find each other, and it's going to happen with or without Twitch's help.
Yeah, it's very true.
Absolutely.
Validate's whole fan base is mostly people of color and queer people of color. Like I said earlier, Validate's been something that people wanted for years. I am very fortunate to somehow build a fan base of a lot of people in like we started in February. It's August, in like 5 months or 6 months. I can't do math. Queers can't do math. Come on now. So it's
I
really
can drive
interesting.
and cook, I can't do math.
Yeah. Honestly, and I'm just gonna be frankly honest, I created Validate for Black women, and Black non-binary people, and just just Black people in general. Not saying that everyone else can't enjoy it, but like when I created Validate and when I put 5 Black people on the face of our cover art, I did it for a reason. Like I wanted people to know that this is an open and welcoming space for Black Indigenous people of color. Like it's for us. And I think that that's what a lot of people are afraid of nowadays, like when making games. And I feel like people should not fear making games for like a small audience. Like when people create games and create media in general, like webcomics, video games, stories, porn, like anything, they always create it for a white audience. And I want people to not do that, because shout out to white people, but also y'all have enough media. Like y'all, like the entire Netflix is made for you. Like all of Netflix originals are made for you.
You can't look anywhere in any corner without finding something for you already. So
I have been crying. I've been begging for a Black woman in gaming, in a game for like years. Like Overwatch will not do it for me.
Overwatch. Oh my God! Don't.
I know. I love Overwatch.
I know.
Since 2016, but they won't do it. They refuse. And Apex came.
They're like, oh, Overwatch 2. We might have. Here's the thing. There's a character.
Marketing, yeah.
Scraps. We're gonna throw you some scraps.
Yeah. And also when these Black women are created, it's usually by white people. Like I don't want to see that. Like, I'm so tired.
And it's based off of their one Black friend that they only know the code switched version of. They don't know how they act around their family. They only know how their one Black friend acts around other white people. You can tell.
Create media for you. Growing up, I've always wanted a big ass game like an Uncharted with a Black woman. And before anyone says anything, I know Nadine is Black, but she's a side character. Also,
don't talk to me about side characters. I'm not a side character.
I'm not a side character. We're not side characters. Like people of color are not side
characters.
characters.
Do I look like the side characters?
We're not your mammies. We're not your stereotypes. We're not your token friends. We're not your slur passes. We are none of that. We are people. We are people creating games. We are people who exist, who are queer, who have feelings, and we are not just racism. And I need people to like firmly understand that when you're creating media, do not create it as the person of color's whole focus is racism. Racism is a big part of our lives, and it dictates how we go about things, but it's not our entire lives. You remember in June when all of that happened and how everyone promised to care about Black creatives? and then
I
they
milked
lie.
that for every penny and for as
yeah.
long as I could because I knew it would be over.
Yes,
A
like
month and a half.
I made a
month
lot
and
of
a half,
money
like,
that
people
month.
were blowing up my PayPal because they felt bad.
Yeah.
Like,
And
y'all
I was
felt
like,
bad
I know
about
this is gonna
racism?
be over.
And then-
Squeeze it for as much as it's worth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like
I didn't even
be
I
a
wasn't
better
even disappointed
ally.
because I knew.
Like, your allyship does not just end in June. It is not just in June when it's June 15th, and it's not just in February when it's Black History Month. Your allyship is year-round, 24/7, no matter what. If you are looking away when you see one of your friends being discriminated against, you are no better than the person that is discriminating them. And to my last point, like, if anyone watching this who wants to create games, who wants to create medias, and you're a person of color, you're queer, just do it. Just do it. Like, just do it. Like, do not let anyone say you cannot do anything. And like I said this earlier, like, my Validate makes $47,000 out of their $16,000 goal. Like, I never expected to do that. Never aim low. Always aim high. Always aim to the point where this cishet white men think they can do. And I hope I see a lot more queer games made by people of color, because I'm about to change this industry. Like, even if these white men hate me, I'm gonna do it anyways.
We're in a new age. We're in an age of technology. Everyone is connected. And since we can have more visibility outside of our little communities, our little cities, I'm going to spend all that time being as loud as possible.
And I think there's such this like misconception, right, in the industry set by these like marketing dude bros that like representation doesn't sell and therefore it doesn't deserve to be made. And I think like each and every one of us, right, is living proof that that is not the case, and these audiences exist and they want this content and they want it to be made by people like them in an authentic way. And I think that's just like, I don't know, it's so fucking important. But I think
I don't
like,
care about cisheads not consuming my content. Like, they can.
It's not for
if they
you.
want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can, but like, we made it for other kids.
Yeah.
Check out the Cloud Meadow Patreon. Cloud Meadow on Patreon.
Yes.
Just Google
Absolutely.
it. It's great. It's doing great. You know, we're working hard. Yeah, and it's only in beta. Like,
Yeah,
we plan on
congratulations.
selling
Yeah.
the most. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, that's
I'm really
fantastic.
excited for it. Like, I like this game myself. It's very
Yeah.
beautiful. It's very artistic. It's not just like. Yeah, it's just check it out. It's really pretty.
I actually wanted to say, like, I think as like a closing thing, I would really love if each of us could, just like give a shout out to like another queer team or another queer game that, you know, is really awesome and people should check out. So yeah, please tell us about Love Shore and how fantastic it is.
Oh my god, shout out to Love Shore, shout out to Sun, especially because without Sun, I would not be here. Like, they've taught me everything I know, and I am 100% in debt to them. Like, just when the coronavirus is over, everyone is getting dinner bought. Like, it's just, like, please, I'm tired of COVID. Like, please find a cure for the coronavirus. But it's just like, shout out to them. Their game's amazing. Their art is amazing. I just, it's so crazy because when I was doing research for Validate, Love Shore was one of our biggest inspirations, and now that I'm friends with the people who made it, it's so crazy. Like, the industry is so small, but everyone is really friendly, and I'm really grateful that everyone I've met has just been super nice.
Love Shore is great. Sun is great. Really amazing people. Unfortunately, not played it yet, but I'm really excited to. A Summer's End, which is by a team, these two queer Asian developers. They are from Canada, but the story itself is based in Hong Kong during the 1980s, about these two queer women living in Hong Kong, you know, really during the economic boom of the era. They're working professionals, or one's a working professional, one's kind of like your, like, kind of fast and loose, like, cool, like, dyke. And it's just about that story of being in love with, like, another woman that's just like you during the 1980s in Hong Kong. And I want to echo, this industry has a lot of amazing queer developers doing awesome shit. And that game is really cool, and everyone should check it out, because God knows it has not gotten enough press coverage for a very obvious reason, the fact it's about queer women of color.
Yeah, I'd like to shout out every single other content creator on the Transmission Gaming team, Twitch team. They're all phenomenal examples of role models, and I don't know, if you are a gaming company or you want to show your game off to Twitch, if it involves queer stuff, check out Transmission Gaming, because I'm willing to bet that any one of those people would be thrilled to get the chance to rep queer stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think if you're also into visual novels, a game that came out, I guess it was like 2 or 3 years ago now, that I really enjoyed was Butterfly Soup.
Oh, yes, yes.
What an amazing game.
Yeah, and I just found that when I talk about, like, you know, messy and authentic and just really like genuine and funny and like human games, that game, I was living in like a studio apartment with my partner at the time when I was playing it, and like he had to like leave the apartment for a bit because I was just laughing out loud so hard and just like having very like loud emotional reactions to these characters and their stories and their interactions, and it's just like, it's so good.
Queer women of color into baseball. It's like, sign me up. I'm in.
It's just I love it. So I would highly recommend that. Yeah, to wrap up, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm really grateful each and every one of you, has taken the time to be here and share your experiences. And really quickly, I was hoping we could go around, and if you want to plug any places that we can find you and your work, so that folks can, come out and support the awesome things that you're doing.
I'll start. So on Twitter, you can find me at ACValens, ACVALENS. And if you want to try the erotica game that I created, that I mentioned a little while ago about, horny trans girls and the succubus and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, go to bloodpact, one word, .neocities, neocities.org, and that'll give you all the information you need to know. You can play the premium version, which is like a starting $15 on a sliding scale, but because a bunch of queers are incredibly broke, we have a free version out too, which also has voice acting from the lovely Nikatine, who joined us tonight, and is very good.
Yay.
It made me blush a lot when I first heard it. I still blush it when I hear it.
Oh my God.
Her voice is phenomenal. And yeah, please check that out, and also check out her work too, which I'm sure she'll show you where to find it.
Hi, I'm Nikatine. I play a lot of games on twitch.tv. That's Nikatine. I do a lot of roleplay content, mostly Grand Theft Auto, and tabletop roleplay content. You can find it every weekday at twitch.tv/Nikatine. That's Nikatine. And Nikatine Prime on Twitter. Oh, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
That's me.
You can find me at DANULMAO on Twitter. I talk a lot of shit. I love men. More importantly, Kiru from Yakuza 0 right now. He's very sexy to me. I'm sorry, women. I still love y'all. But you can also find...
I love it.
You can also...
I've been like, I'm living for your Twitter content recently.
I just talk too much. Like, it's great. But you can also support Validate, Stan Validate. I'm probably gonna make those into stickers so everyone can just put them everywhere.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
ValidateGame.com, and then Validate Game on Twitter, Validate Game pretty much everywhere. We're really active on Twitter. We just finished a Kickstarter, so thank you for everyone who donated, who backed. We love you so much. Our game comes out next year, so look out for that. Keep a lookout. Please buy my game. Thank you.
You can find me on Twitter. My art Twitter is Carbonnoid Draws. That's CARBONOID Draws. And you can also find my adult entertainment, modeling, sex work, whatever, Twitter is at dreadful_damsel if you think I'm cute. Right now my work is primarily behind the scenes because we are in production. But the good thing about spending so much time in production is that when you get the final product, you get so much stuff.
I'm really excited. And also I'm Cheska. I'm a game designer and developer. So you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Chesky. It's CESCHIII. And that has links to all of the projects that I've recently launched and, I'm currently working on. So if you'd like to play a cooperative game about, magical girls in space, saving the universe, and being very sparkly and queer, you can check out, we're at Play Starcrossed on Twitter, and you can find Starcrossed on, I I think pretty much every major storefront. So we're also on Switch if you are looking for more Switch games. And We Should Talk is also on Twitter. We are @_We Should Talk. And you can also find us on Switch, PS4, Xbox One, Steam, itch, all the places. And I'd also like to plug Code Coven quickly. So as I said, we're an online organization. We teach game development and coding to people of marginalized genders. So if you're looking to get started with making games, or you've been making games for a while and would like to find a community that will support your work, you can find us on Twitter. We are @code_coven, or you can find us at codecoven.co. So please come make games with me. Just I wanted to say again, super huge thank you to everyone for participating. It's been really great to meet all of you and get to know you. Any other, I guess, closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for having
thank
me.
Our pleasure.
Love chatting with you.
Yeah.
This is my first PAX ever. I've been trying to go to PAX all
Yeah.
my life, but the first PAX is when I'm talking. That's game changing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Literally.
absolutely.
No pun intended, right?
Yeah.
Seriously,
Yeah,
though. Yeah.
I'm so excited to see, just people, listening to this panel, and please come find us online. Please make queer as hell games. That's all I've got. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.